Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on Face the State. I'm Tracy Townsend. We are going to start with the President's State of the Union address and the Ohio connections. For the second year in a row, Central Ohio got a shout out from the President during the State of the Union address, all because of Intel.
Outside of Columbus, Ohio, Intel is building semiconductor factories on 1,000 acres, literally a field of dreams. It's going to create 10,000 jobs, that one investment, 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 jobs in those factories once they're finished. They call them factories. Jobs paying an average of $130,000 a year, and many do not require a college degree. Jobs. Because we work together, these jobs where people don't have to leave home to search for opportunity. And it's just getting started. Think about the new homes, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses. So much more that's going to be needed to support those 3,000 permanent jobs and the factories that are going to be built.
Another Ohio mention happened when the President talked about the infrastructure law.
I promised I'd be a president for all Americans. We'll fund these projects, and I'll see you at the groundbreaking. Look, this law will further unite all of America. Projects like Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky over the Ohio River, built 60 years ago, badly needed repairs, one of the nation's most congested freight routes, carrying $2 billion worth of freight every single day across the Ohio River. And folks, I've been talking about fixing it for decades, but we're really finally going to get it done. Yes. I went there last month with Democrats and Republicans and from both states to deliver a commitment of $1.6 billion for this project. And while I was there, I met a young woman named Sarah, who's here tonight. I don't know where Sarah is. Is she up in the box? I don't know. Sarah, how are you? Well, Sarah, for 30 years, I learned, she told me she'd been a proud member of the Iron Workers Local 44, known as the Cowboys in the Sky. The folks who built Cincinnati's skyline. Sarah said she can't wait to be 10 stories above the Ohio River building that new bridge. God bless her. That's pride.
Well, how are Ohio lawmakers in Washington, D.C. responding to what President Biden had to say? We talked with U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, Congresswoman Joyce Beatty. We also spoke with Congressman Troy Balderson and Congressman Mike Carey. Now, you might remember Mike Carey is on the Ways and Means Committee.
So do you have any reaction to what you heard last night in the President's State of the Union address when you think about your role on this committee?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I think one, I was encouraged early on in the speech. I think, Biden acknowledged that we do have divided government. We have, the Republicans are in control of the House, and Speaker McCarthy and the president are going to have to work together. And as we approach this debt limit, it's going to be something that we're going to try to put in place and work together to put parameters around certain things. I don't think anybody wants to hold the president hostage, as he kind of said, or the economy hostage last night. I think that was a little bit of pandering to the left, but I think we want to have a fruitful discussion, and I think we want to make sure that we limit the growth in spending, because we have seen, a tremendous amount of growth. Many of us ran on the fact that we ultimately want to balance the budget, And listen, that is something that is doable. We were able to do that under President Clinton and Speaker Newt Gingrich. And again, divided government. So my hope is we can kind of get through the hyperbole and really, and my committee is a serious committee again. So my hope is that we can put together, very good documents, very good legislation that the president and the Senate can agree to. Hopefully, we can get through this and really do the things that the American public want us to do bipartisanly and move the country forward.
So for people who will see this interview, can you give us an example of how you think the problems at the border, I'm assuming you think the problems at the border are problematic for your constituents here in the 12th district?
And Tracy, I've been down there 3 times now and witnessed it firsthand. Actually was out at 2:00 in the morning with the Border Patrol, my last experience there. So I kind of see what they're going through and what they're dealing with. That was also the time frame of when Governor DeWine sent down the Ohio National Guard to help. Several states were doing that. The lack of support to me is unbelievable to our Border Patrol. The technologies that we're not utilizing and what we need to utilize, we can do more of with drones. It's a constant battle. And the Border Patrol is doing everything in their power to take care of, protect our border.
I think he hit on all of the points that you can think of that we've been working on in Congress. When you think about healthcare and lowering the cost of healthcare, he spoke directly to those who are diabetic and talked about lowering the costs and capping the cost for insulin. He talked about crime and what we must do to protect those who have lost their lives at the hands of police officers who are there to serve and protect us. He talked about small businesses. He talked about justice and all of the reforms, including women's rights. He was very strong on the issues, and it was very clear that he wanted everyone to know that he could talk about the great successes. Think about this. More jobs than any other president, to the tune of some 12 million jobs. Let's talk about the unemployment rate. He talked about how low that has been. He didn't run away from any issues. And it was so nice when he talked about Social Security and Medicare. And when the opposite side of the aisle didn't stand up for things that we're fighting for our children's and families, he put that question out there. I want to see who will stand with me with seniors, for our senior citizens.
I think he was right on. I mean, he talked about Intel, which is really important to viewers of WBNS, and bigger than that around the state. He talked about the PACT Act, which I helped to write, named after an Ohioan from Columbus, who will get the people who were exposed to those huge football field-sized burn pits. Any one of 23 illnesses that they present with, that are brought on by those burn pits, will get treatment in Columbus or in any one of the veterans hospitals or community-based centers. He talked about the pension bill, which 100,000 Ohioans, people who are losing their pensions, they will be restored. He talked about the infrastructure bill, which will really matter to the whole state. And I worked a lot with Senator Portman bipartisanly on that bill. The State of the Union was about accomplishments, what we've done in the last 2 years and what we're going to continue to do.
Now, we did ask Senator J.D. Vance for an interview. His staff instead pointed us to this statement. In the statement, Vance said Ohioans are worse off than 2 years ago. He said President Biden is responsible and said that Biden failed to protect the core national security interests of the United States. While the president was speaking to the nation, our team of fact checkers was standing by, ready to investigate what's true, what's false, and what's missing context. Here's Casey Decker with our verified national team.
Verify here to fact check the State of the Union and the Republican response. Here you can see the sources we went to. One of the first things President Biden did in his speech was take credit for economic growth during his presidency, citing booming jobs numbers.
After we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs, more jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all.
The first half of that claim is true. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there were 143 million jobs when Biden took office. Now, 2 years later, there are 155 million. But the second half of the claim is false. The BLS has data going back to 1939, and we found that between 1996 and 2000, when Bill Clinton was president, more than 12.4 million jobs were added. That's more than the 12.1 million added in Biden's 2 years. Now, those years span Clinton's first and second terms in office, so the growth wasn't just in one term, but it was over one 4-year span. Next, Biden also claimed he'd taken huge steps towards balancing the budget.
My administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion.
That's true. According to the Federal Reserve, the national deficit before Biden took office was more than $3.1 trillion. By 2022, that number had dropped below $1.4 trillion. No other 2-year span saw a decrease that large since the Fed began reporting that data in 1901. Still, the claim needs context. The deficit ballooned above $3 trillion in 2020 because of massive spending programs the government launched to respond to the pandemic. So a lot of the deficit shrinking is a result of those programs expiring, not necessarily any specific action taken by Biden. Okay, moving on to the Republican response from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
100,000 Americans a year are now killed from drug overdoses, largely from fentanyl.
We can verify that's true. The CDC's most recent data puts drug overdose deaths at 101,000 over the last 12 months. Roughly 70,000 of those deaths are from synthetic opioids, like fentanyl. It's a figure President Biden himself highlighted in the State of the Union, calling for more drug detection equipment at the border. But Sanders also claimed the drugs came across the southern border. But where the fatal drugs are coming from simply isn't tracked. With your State of the Union Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
And now to a new initiative from Lieutenant Governor Jon Husted that you learned about first right here on 10 TV. It's called the Social Media Parental Notification Act. Husted says he wants companies like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to get parents' consent before a child under 16 can open an account. But will it work? That's one of many questions the Wake Up CBuzz team asked Lieutenant Governor Husted when we first learned about his plan.
Well, the real reason behind it is our children are suffering. They're suffering from mental health issues. As the governor said in the State of the State, he quoted Desmond Tutu, who said, "We keep pulling bodies out of the water. We need to look upstream to find the cause." Well, the cause of many of the mental health issues and challenges our children are facing are directly as a result of social media and technology in their lives. Algorithms that are very harmful to them, content that's very harmful to them, data being collected on them, and it's time that we step up and do more about it.
So you have his verification process that it's a little lengthy, right? And it requires parents signing the splash page consent and then verifying who they are, emails going back and forth. What is stopping a kid from saying, "Hey, Johnny, pretend you're my dad"?
What we believe will happen is that with the process we've designed is that the children sign on, their parents have to validate, you have to put in addresses and all of that kind of information. Then the social media company is required to send those parents to that address a letter validating that they know their children has signed up for this account. Like any law, there are ways certainly that you could find a way around it, but we're really just trying to empower parents to create more parental awareness about what's going on with their children, to get parents involved at perhaps denying this or putting filters that have limitations on the content that they're receiving.
Can I pick up on that and have you talk about the companies? What kind of feedback or buy-in do you anticipate or have you already received?
Well, the companies know that this is harmful, but they're making billions of dollars off of it, and right now doing very little to protect our children. And I expect that there will be some companies that will push back, but I hope that they will embrace the recognition that they have a responsibility in this, that it's harmful for our children, and we invite them into this legislative process to offer alternatives and how we all can get better at this. But they need to be forced to the table. This will force them to the table.
You say they should have some responsibility in this. So how can this be enforced? Will the state have any power with this proposal that they could go after social media companies, or does this kind of fall on the parent to kind of self-police?
No, the state can take action against the companies if they don't comply with what they're being asked to do. There could be both eventually legal and civil ramifications for them if they don't do it.
Where do we draw the line with social media versus like a search engine? How far does this proposal go?
We're focused on children under the age of 16, social media apps, and some gaming platforms, because that's where the problem lies. We're not talking about e-commerce or other things like that. We're trying to very narrowly tailor this.
Is there an education piece or empowerment piece for parents? Because I hate to say this, but our kids are a little bit smarter than we are when it comes to technology.
Just a smidge.
Mama knows everything but except that. And you know, is there something for parents? Is there a part of this that parents need to educate themselves on instead of saying, it's just social media?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be posting tools for children or for parents to filter and to block and to protect against and give them more information about what their children are doing online. Think about this. You wouldn't let a stranger into your house to have a private conversation with your child in their room, but that's happening if you're not in control of their social media because strangers are getting access to them through these apps.
So this is giving it a little teeth, so to speak.
Absolutely.
You can watch the entire interview with the Lieutenant Governor right now on the 10 TV app. One Ohio couple paid out tens of thousands of dollars to start their family. Then they were asked to pay tens of thousands of dollars for an abortion. Their heartbreaking story and the law, they say, needs to change. Right now, one group is working to get the abortion rights issue on your November ballot. Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights is collecting signatures to make that happen. Those doctors say they want voters to ensure access to abortion stays legal in our state, something that Pro-Choice Ohio agrees with.
It's so important that Ohioans are able to amend our state constitution when things that are important to us are jeopardized by elected officials who are not listening to the will of the people.
But when it comes to the will of the people, anti-abortion advocates predict any vote will show most Ohioans are on their side.
60, 90 days ago, Ohioans had a choice. Devoutly pro-life Mike DeWine, devoutly pro-choice Nan Whaley. Mike DeWine won 64% of the vote. The voters spoke. The voters speak at the State House, at the Ohio Supreme Court. We elected 3 pro-life conservative justices. The voters get to make these decisions every 2 or 4 years.
It would take more than 400,000 valid signatures gathered by July 5th to place the issue on the November ballot. Right now, abortion is legal in Ohio up to 22 weeks, but that's not the only barrier for pregnant women. One Columbus woman says she wanted her baby, but when she needed an abortion, Ohio's laws put her through a nightmare. 10 TV's Yolanda Harris has her story.
It was a long road to Pennsylvania where Beth and Kyle Long said goodbye to their baby daughter. The road began here in Columbus, where Beth and Kyle met and got married. They spent more than 4 years and $45,000 trying to start a family through fertility treatments. Finally, Beth became pregnant with a baby girl they nicknamed Star.
She looks perfect.
But then, on January 4th, Kyle wrote in his journal, Beth receives bad test results. Most of Star's organs were outside her body. Doctors delivered the devastating news. It was fatal.
She had something called limb-body wall complex. It's very rare. Most of her internal organs spilled out in a hole in her abdomen and were enmeshed in the placenta.
And there was more bad news. The doctors explained that because of Star's condition, Beth had an increased chance of bleeding during birth or an abortion and might possibly need a hysterectomy.
The bigger she gets, the more complicated and enmeshed it's going to be. So time was of the essence.
Because of Ohio law, the Longs couldn't move in a timely way. Beth is a nurse employed by the state of Ohio. The law bans her state-issued insurance from paying for abortions. There's an exception for when the life of the mother is in danger, but Beth's life wasn't immediately at risk. She says the insurance company refused to pay for the procedure, which would cost $20,000 to $30,000. After 3 weeks, the Longs were finally able to schedule an abortion at a Pennsylvania hospital at a discounted rate. Beth and Kyle brought with them baby dresses Beth had knit, and together they said goodbye to their daughter. In January, Kyle reached out to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Senator J.D. Vance, who oppose abortion. He wrote, "We loved our baby girl and would have done anything to keep her. Ohio law prevents grieving parents from the health care they need." Kyle says he never received responses. Spokespeople for DeWine and Vance say they do plan to respond to Kyle's email. DeWine's office noted that the law that prevents state insurance from paying for abortions was enacted before he took office. The Longs were left in anger and grief.
I was in mental anguish because I love her.
Yolanda Harris reporting for us on that. A spokesperson for her workplace, which owns the insurance plan, says they will continue to comply with the law. Still to come this morning on Face the State, the push to expand Amtrak in Ohio. Hear why Senator Sherrod Brown says the time is now. And there's a push at the State House to end sales tax on diapers. We'll update you on where Senate Bill 39 stands now. Welcome back. There's a push in the Ohio Senate to stop sales tax on baby products. Senate Bill 39 had its first committee hearing earlier in the week. It passed, families wouldn't pay sales tax on diapers, car seats, cribs, and baby monitors. Senator Tim Schaefer from Lancaster said the purpose is to encourage more people to move to Ohio.
A removal of sales tax from such products would ease the financial burden of raising children and encourage people nationwide to start their family here in Ohio. This bill will demonstrate that Ohio is truly pro-child and pro-family.
The governor has promised to push for a similar tax break in the next budget. This week, Governor Mike DeWine directed the state to apply for the first phase of funding for passenger rail service in the state. This is federal funding that could help Ohio build inner-city passenger rail corridors. Amtrak has been looking at Ohio for the last several years. It's a move that U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown supports.
You know, Ohio's different from most states. We don't have one dominant city. We have Cleveland, Columbus, Toledo, Dayton, Cincinnati, Akron. And there's simply no reason we shouldn't re-expand Amtrak to serve these communities. And I'm hopeful that the governor's interested, I'm interested, and we're going to make, I know Congresswoman Beatty's interested in doing this. And this is something that I hope begins anew and we begin to provide Amtrak services to Ohioans.
The state of Ohio and Dollar General reached an agreement over allegations of deceptive pricing. Attorney General Dave Yost says the agreement requires Dollar General to take steps to make sure shelf prices match the price that's actually charged at the counter. Yost says this is a step in that process, but litigation is not over. More than $200 million in grants is now going to Honda's new battery plant project in Fayette County. Jobs Ohio says a $140 million grant will go directly to the plant. A $10 million workforce grant for the project and an $87 million grant will help retool Honda's existing facilities. The money can be paid over the next 10 years on top of $156 million in tax incentives from the state. Well, we have covered a lot today and we are glad you're here with us. Have a great week.